Welcome back, everybody, to WCS Season 2 Premier League. We're in the round of 32 in Group A, where we already saw one player drop out in Kane and one player advance in first place in Bunny. Now, Huck, Bunny advancing in first place is, of course, what people expected with him being highly touted lately. But you have to say it's especially impressive considering he's been so busy lately and he hasn't been able to necessarily practice in his own home for about over 3 weeks now.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's because he's played so much that he feels very comfortable. I don't feel like he broke out any specific builds necessarily. It just seems like his normal ladder play, you know, but that was good enough for this group. Now, going into Toronto, the next step, perhaps he's going to, you know, study his opponents more, come up with something a little bit more unique, a little more pizzazz, but for now, his general macro games, it's good enough for this group, and he showed that. It wasn't even close, in my opinion. He outshined everybody in this group.
All right, well, he moves on in first place, and this last match that we're coming up next will determine who will join him in the round of 16. It'll be Jim versus Petraeus. Now, well, let's talk about Jim first, since he is a Protoss player and you are a Protoss player yourself. You were able to cast both his games, and watching his games, is there anything that you felt he did especially well that stood out to you?
Just playing towards his image, I want to say, like everybody, we've said that a lot, but his PVZ, people have known him as someone that's like very cheesy, 2-base all-in, timing attacks, and he went Nexus first both times, and one game he went very macro defensive and then won the game off of that, and then the other game he went 6 or 7 gate all in and he won off of that. So knowing that he has those options and he can play both styles and they're very polarizing, it's going to be really hard to play against that as a Zerg. You're going to have to scout very well. You're going to have to prepare for a lot of different things throughout the game. You can't just read your opponent and metagame him.
Well, he's going to be going up against Petraeus, and Petraeus, I feel like there's a lot of parallels between him and Cyril. Cyril was also a very, very young player who did very well and made it to the round of 16 finals in Season 1. They're both playing for My Insanity, they're both Zerg players, they're both very young. Do you think that Petraeus will be able to do just as well as Cyril did and making it to the finals?
I think he could potentially do better, just in the fact that he lost his first match, it was kind of close. He won his second match, and now he's going to have to play against Jim. But as time goes on, he's getting more and more comfortable. He's not an experienced player as far as when it comes to lands, and now he's getting that experience that he needs. And everybody knows he's a great player. He beat Maro from home 3-0 in to make it to Premier, and now he's showing that as long as he's comfortable and he plays his game, he can beat the best players. And Jim is a very beatable player for him, so I definitely think he can make it, and he's getting more comfortable as the day goes on.
Well, looking at these two players, you've talked about both pros and cons about both of them. If you had to predict, okay, Bunny, who's going to be joining Bunny in the round of 16? Jim, Petraeus, they're both very young. There's a lot of nerves on this. If you had to choose one, who would it be?
I'm gonna pick the Kiwi, my boy Mac. He's too lovable not to pick him, I guess. He's cute in his own shy, timid way, but I have confidence in him, and I think he'll be able to do it.
All right, well, it's time to find out who will join Bunny in Toronto in the round of 16. Our casters that will lead us into that game are going to be Greetorp and Nathanius.
Thank you very much, Smix and Huck. Huck, man, his first day casting.
I know, he's so cute.
They grow up so fast.
Kawaii.
Yeah, and Petraeus, too, man. This is a big moment for him going into this final series against Jim. Jim has had that taste. Jim has been in Premier League, you know, many, many times. I wish Roddy was here just to give me the full synopsis of his entire life.
He used to be Jim Credible.
Yeah, but Petraeus he's trying to plant that New Zealand flag down here in WCS in his first run, and this is a big moment for him because, you know, it's not often you get to go to the round of 16 in your first season. This is his opportunity to go and play on an even bigger stage this season.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on both these guys, okay? Jim, we've seen him in the limelight before, and he has not produced to expectations, I would say. A lot of people, after he broke out into the scene, were just like, well, this guy's the best Protoss in the world. Hands down, his PvT is the most unique style. He's been solid in his PvP, his PvZ. He has great practice partners right now with Parting and Haas, two really fantastic Korean players. But he just somewhere is not connecting the dots. And I really feel it has to come down to his nerves. You know, we talk about nerves with both these guys. I think actually it affects Jim an incredible amount. Just because he's only 19, man.
Yeah.
He's a young kid.
It's crazy because you think, you know, you have all that experience, but oftentimes, even with the styles too, like when you look at the way that they play versus Bunny, you know, pretty pretty stubborn overall. You know, the Chinese players we've seen, like, I guess the best example is actually Jim mixing it up a bit earlier today against Kane, taking those greedy builds at the start rather than immediately going for the aggression. But it seems to always fall back to those types of builds. You know, that's like what we saw him try to go for in game number 2 against Bunny, but he just took so much damage that he was forced to make a push. He didn't really want to make that early in the game. And it really has to come down to just keeping solid. PVZ looked good at the start of the day this morning, so, I mean, he just got to play his A game.
That's right. And game 2 against Bunny, or excuse me, not game 2. The series 2 against Bunny was just 2 different times where I just felt like it was just a huge moment of nerves. I mean, the game 1 was when the Widow Mine drop happened.
Yeah,
and it was
he
just
didn't react in time.
Yeah, he lost a huge chunk of his probes.
Pretty much all his probes in his natural to that drop after the Marines were cleaned up.
And how do you actually come back from that? He did a great job with his Blinkstalker micro, just wasn't able to maintain.
And I think the series that Petraeus lost, like, can't really hit him too hard. You know, he played a really good, it was a really close series against Bunny. The game that he won looked very, very impressive in terms of his decision-making and his ability to control an otherwise unusual situation. I actually spoke to Bunny, and he was like, yeah, I don't get in that situation very often. It's like Max seems to be a little better prepared than me for that.
And that's the thing. Petraeus has the capabilities of playing at those super late game stages because he is, as we were talking about, a ladder hero. He is the type of guy that will go and grind out a ton of games, get so much experience, and be in these weird positions that you've never seen before, even if you've played a lot. But he's been in because he just grinds and grinds and grinds.
And we are ready to find out who else is making it out of Group A in the World Championship Series Premier League, spawning in the northwest position of Coda. We have the Blue Zerg from My Insanity. It's Petraeus.
And spawning in the southwest position as the Red Protoss, it is Invictus Gaming's Jim.
So, big questions we have to ask ourselves, Retorp. We did not get to see Petraeus play any Protosses today. Jim is the only one in the group. But Petraeus, who is teammates with the Zerg player that Jim was able to defeat, surely had a conversation or two about maybe adjustments that could be made, ways to handle Jim's strategies. And my biggest question in regards to that is, will Jim show a similar start to these games, either to emulate his original builds or to throw Petraeus off so he can do something else even crazier?
See, I think, you have to be so careful with actually planning like that because...
I think the drone might even be part of that too.
I think so, man. I think you're absolutely right because you were just saying how, you could potentially like hard counter and go for a really fast pool in response to something like this really quick 15 next.
But the drone sees, like, I think this is a situation where he could just block this, and this just makes things really awkward. Jim has to build like a late. He has to build a late gate, and now the other one comes down. I think he sees the second probe. He's like, I don't want to build a gateway. If he could get a hatchery down, that would be cash money. I don't know if he's that crazy. He builds his hatch back home, but he's just trying to delay this as much as he can.
It's really intelligent, man. Really intelligent. I like that soft counter, I would say, overall, because it
he wants to know. Yeah.
Yep. It forces Jim to just alter his build a little bit, weakens his economy, and then he's getting this delayed gateway. He could have been, honestly, it could have been like a 10 pool at that point, too.
Yeah, that's true.
But he just doesn't want a hard counter. He doesn't want to rely to just a coin flip.
Because if Jim doesn't go Nexus first and he goes for a crazy fast pool, then things get really weird for Petraeus.
And we know Jim is very incredibly aware of his surroundings, of how he looks to other players. So I think he's like processing all this, and he's just like, okay, I think 15x is still going to be good this game.
I mean, he plays up against a hatch first. He can't really be punished for it, like we said. Yep. The drone block was reasonable, but Petraeus is also not the kind of guy, I guess, to go. Because if I think about other Zerg players that have seen something like this, I imagine there are scenarios where Zerg will try to build just like a hatchery there. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have to pull a ton of probes, and I'm not really going to go into any further aggression, so I'm just going to stay safe. And Jim is getting his cybernetics core now, so really what it comes down to is what is he going to do with the gas that he gets, with the forces that he acquires. He does saturate 5 probes on his assimilators so far. Very interested to know what kind of tech he goes for and if he tries to hide, like, not mining his gas.
Yeah. Well, he does put the 6-1 on right there. I think it might have been just a mistake. Pretty negligible so far, but yeah, I mean, the door is really open right now for what both these guys are capable of doing. But I think it's very interesting that we have the delayed third base, but it does make sense given the opening so far. Petraeus hasn't yet thrown down that third hatchery. The reason why I think it's incredibly interesting is because a lot of times you'll actually drone up or over drone on your bases if you don't throw down this hatchery really quickly.
Yeah,
And it looks like he's finally getting around to it.
It comes down to, with the third hatchery and the Zergling speed on the way, I don't necessarily know that Petraeus wants to make like a big Ling push, but by having speed, he has the option to use a handful of Lings to A, check for proxy probes or pylons, but B, be able to react if he does actually scout a big push. But if no such push comes, then he's okay. He gives the Zergling up the ramp. Whether or not he realizes that's a robotics facility is very important because Jim could be doing something crazy. He still hasn't taken those gases on his natural yet.
Yeah, I don't know if actually he had enough time to click on it and see. So it's really all up in the air. But I think, I love what you just said there with the capabilities of throwing down Zergling pressure, because we saw Kane. Actually, Kane's ZvP is very similar to that, where he stays on hatchery tech a little bit longer and then tries to actually pressure if your opponent is doing a third base or a really quick third base. I think that's what Zergs have kind of...
The early Link speed just gives you the option.
Oh, yeah.
It gives you so many options in this scenario. And we have an Immortal immediately being chrono boosted out by Jim. He's got a Stalker and a Sentry to block this. The Sentry actually gets caught. He's going to have to burn that force field to keep it alive. And every force field will, at this point, be very important for this eventual push that I imagine must be coming as Jim, especially if he queues up immediately a second Immortal, like he could just go for a big push.
Yeah, this is the this is not like a super like economic type either. I think he has to push with 2 Immortals when you're doing something like this, because you can see he only has taken 3 gases. When you take 3 gases, you don't have enough to actually get a huge sentry count.
That Overlord totally saw the Immortal too. So he should have a rough idea of what's going on here.
The question is whether or not he realizes the timing. This will actually hit like 30 seconds faster with a lot more gateway units.
Seven gateways total is what he's going to end up at. A few of these are going to be finishing perhaps out as he's already pushed out. Big question now, since he's waiting for that Warp Prism too, he doesn't have any probes out on the map, right? So it's going to be a bit of a slow process for him. He's walled off his natural, he built an extra pylon there. This is where Petraeus' map awareness, being able to keep tabs on that army are crucial. If he snipes that probe, things get very difficult. It becomes a situation where it's all down to information, to make sure that neither of these guys end up being caught off guard by the other.
There is the capacity, by the way. I've seen guys like Puck do builds like this, but it was way back when Swarm Hosts weren't used nearly as much. Now they've kind of gone away from Swarm Host, but it's when on Neoplanet S you could do builds like this and actually just throw down a Twilight Council and a Nexus. It's possible. It's possible, but the thought process is I'm just going to keep my opponent on really low economy, keep them making roaches, and because I have kind of like the defender's advantage with a lot of the ramps, I can actually play it macro and then keep it where as soon as you get up to 200, you're all on roaches, and I have the better army composition. I don't think that's what's going to happen here, but it's just important to note it could happen.
Of all the options that they have, like when you make moves like this, it's pretty clear what your intentions are. Especially as Jim, just waiting, make sure that everything is okay with the setup for both of these guys to resume the game. But overall, it's a very important situation. You're putting a lot on the line when you're in a situation like this, especially considering that it is the final match. Like, there's no second chances here.
Yeah, I mean, once you get eliminated out of this, you have to wait until the next WCS season, and
you have to wait all the way till Challenger.
That takes a long time, man. Because we're at the round of 32. This is the beginning of greatness. They don't want to be eliminated from greatness. Greatness, power. Well.
Yeah. So at this point, we're just double checking everything to make sure that everything is okay for the players. So shouldn't be too much longer before we get back into this game. Of course, you want to make sure with this much on the line that everything is cool, everything's all right. So just want to take this time, of course, say a big thank you to everybody that has been tuning in online on Twitch. Awesome audience that we've had here. And of course, those of you who have been throwing out those tweets, hashtagging WCS, cheering on your favorite players, especially I'm not, I consider myself somewhat decent with time zones, but I have no idea what abhorrent hour it is over in New Zealand or Australia.
I have no
for those poor souls that have stayed up to tune in to cheer on their boy Mac. As this big moment for them, when you look at things like WCS, the opportunities that you get for players like Petraeus to come out here and actually compete on the international level, there's not as much going on as far as the big tournament scene in Australia, in New Zealand. So this is really like the biggest chance that a lot of these guys get to come out and prepare and practice and play. Players like Petraeus, like Aigas, Pig, who we saw, all players that had pretty decent runs, to say the least, in the last season of WCS.
Yeah, I think it really speaks volumes because I feel like their ping and their competition isn't nearly as strong as some of the other regions, and they're still able to ascend to a pretty strong level. I mean, ranked 6th in the world right now statistically for Petraeus for foreigners, for non-Koreans.
And it says a lot. It's not something that he's been able to put the results behind, but Roddy and I have been saying the same thing about Kane from all of last year of WCS. Kane was good. We knew he was good. Most of the pro players, especially North American scene, knew that Kane was very good. Didn't put the results up, and then at the start of this year, boom, he gets up there, gets top 8. That's really what it's all about. It's about, you're improving over time enough to the point where you can make that breakout stage and get the fans and, the love you deserve.
It's crazy. Even if you are considered a favorite, StarCraft is the type of game where it's so incredibly hard to get the right match at the right situations for exactly where you're good at. And a lot of times, even if you're a 70% favorite going into a tournament every single time, the probability that you win is actually pretty low. So, I mean, there's not saying that it's very, very RNG based, because I think ordinarily the better player wins, but it is the situation where it's tough to put out consistent marks and consistent wins. And if you're able to do so, you are playing out of your mind.
And that's one of the biggest things about tournaments like this, and any large scale international tournament. Of course, Petraeus, who was just competing at DreamHack France, last weekend, and you have of course Jim, who coming all the way over from China is not quite the shortest flight either. So that's really a big factor that has to come into play for this. Although that's where also you talk about the experience factor for Jim, who's done this almost as many times as there's been WCS seasons in general. So it sounds like we are just making sure, just going over once again, of course, to see that everything is cool. But I think we'll be getting back into this game very shortly. It looks like we're going to try now. So players are ready to go, and we should be starting any moment to get back into game number 1 between Petraeus and Jim. Thank you guys so much for bearing with us. It's been a pretty exciting day of games.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, obviously the Petraeus versus Bunny series was some of my favorite games that I've seen as of late. But we are all loaded in, ready to go, and we're going to feel it out. Let's see how good this pressure is going to be. On that production tab, we can already see the roaches have started by the time the Immortal Sentry army has made its way across the map. Remember, there's only one huge spike to this army. There's not continued force fields that exist with this. Unless he actually makes more sentries. You can go for a sentry zealot directly after this, or you can go for the more DPS route, which is going to be the stalkers, and then use it to get zealots as well.
Yeah. Zergling counterattack by Petraeus. He's just trying to see if he can get in here, force some defensive warp ins. He actually busts one pylon, forcing out that force field, and already a zealot gets warped in at home when Jim wants everything possible to attack. He's actually just going to focus on the gateways. He's really trying to force his way in for the counterattack. He's saying, I'm going to spread myself out, I'm going to pre-pull drones, and just do everything that I can to buy as much time as possible.
He's not actually using his force fields correctly there.
He steps back. The Lings have actually busted in. They've made their way inside the natural. Jim's trying to build a big wall to stop everything, but if they get the surround on those zealots, things get even more complicated. The Mothership Core getting targeted down by the Queens as well.
Man, the multi-attack was beautiful. It really stops Jim from microing in two locations.
This is like game-ending levels of damage. He can't recall, so he has to commit to this fight. And at this point, if he doesn't warp in aggressively, there's no way he can break Petraeus.
Nope.
But he has to warp in defensively. He's losing all his probes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no. His probes actually went to the natural, so he's okay. But he is losing the main army at home. There's just too many roaches. They have Glio Reconstitution, and he's going to lose one of the Immortals. Tried to do some Immortal Micro, but it's just not going to be enough.
At this point, there's not much you can do. GG. Petraeus takes game number 1 against Invictus Gaming's Jim in a pretty clean fashion. You know, we talked about this. By having the Zergling speed so early, he doesn't need to do much until he knows his opponent is attacking.
Yes.
And then using the counterattack to really say, hey, if you want to commit to a push like this, you have to go 100% all in, base trade level scenario. And Jim was, you know, obviously a bit caught off guard by that. He tried to defend with some warp ends at home, but as soon as you're splitting 50-50, it gets so tricky because Jim wants to go make this big push, but then you look back at your main base and you've got Zerglings all over the place. Like, you can't warp in aggressively here. That Warp Prism wasn't even in phase mode to actually add any extra units, and you've got Lings all over. Look how many pylons you built. Like, that's a good warping wave of units.
That's right. I mean, this is a very tempo-based type of style. You need a lot of momentum as you're building and attacking those roaches, and you're attacking into your opponent. If you don't get that and you're warping it at home, it completely ruins the momentum. And it was just the perfect amount of units to be counterattacking, the perfect amount of units to be defending. He knew that he had this Glio reconstitution. He just pushed in for the win and was able to easily crush this army. Just beautifully played by Petraeus.
This type of army, without it being able to get reinforcements, really hurts. And Petraeus got up to a pretty nice, 46 drones in that situation. Even though the probes were, most of them were salvaged from the main, they were only mining on that one base. And you're so oversaturated, you actually don't get any gains from that.
I think one of the most important things when you're playing against like a ladder hero like Petraeus is you do not do these 2-base or 3-base like very obvious all-ins that Petraeus is so used to seeing, because a lot of times, like in PvZ, I would say, this is anecdotal, but probably 20% of your games are going to be all-ins like that, or 30% of your games.
20% on ladder is generous.
Well, I'm saying specifically Immortal all-ins.
Yeah, okay.
So I feel like that situation comes up so often that it's very scary to think that's going to be a high...
Yeah, I'd still say, like, big gateway pushes like this, whether it's Immortal-based or just gateways or otherwise, like, Petraeus understands that the counterattack is really strong because those warp-ins are the key. Immortals are nice. Immortals are supposed to be the anchor, the sweet spot that really makes the attack unstoppable. But the way that he forced the defensive warp-ins, all that production, really hurt him. We're now loading into game number 2. We will be playing on Vani Research Station. I don't know if Petraeus is actually a gold baser in ZvP. Most Zergs that I've seen play on this map in the last month have actually opted to take a quick gold.
Well, we've already seen it earlier today with Kane trying that out. Did not work out for Kane. Was it Kane?
Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting to see, because you have just a lot of different ways that you can use it, especially if our Protoss tries to go Nexus first again. We are loaded in though in the top position. We have the Blue Zerg player currently up 1-0, representing Team My Insanity. He is Petraeus.
And in the south position, spawning as the red Protoss, he is down 0-1. It is Jim. Again, Invictus Gaming, another team that has just been so fantastic in producing some of the highest quality caliber players. Of course, in the Chinese scene is where they're established, and we've seen.
I mean, they take really good care of their players. They're absolutely massive in China. Those guys have been also competing in all the events they can over there. We talked about earlier that they have a lot of results in tournaments like the Li Fang Cup. I believe they also play in things like the Kung Fu Cup as well, which has been going on over the last couple weeks. So. These guys are working hard. Invictus Gaming, who of course, the Prime tag on the end of Jim's name from their Pro League partnership with Prime. And I actually saw, there were like pictures tweeted out from Pro League. Jim and Edison were actually there, and I'm very interested to see how those guys end up with working together with Korean teams like that at the highest level, end up preparing for matches like this. Fast Forge opening from Jim though.
Okay, so actually. The Edison, Jim's manager, was actually talking about how his practice with Haas and parting has actually let him be a little bit better with cannon rushes. It's a little bit interesting, right? Like,
I mean, against a pool first like this,
yeah,
can
it's
you
not
really?
Gonna happen,
yeah,
right?
I can't imagine he would try. Like, that would be like the ultimate ballsy move. So I expect to see him just drop the Nexus here and not go crazy. He does still check the gold, which I think is very, very intelligent, because this hatchery, it doesn't have eyes, and he's going to try to cannon rush after the Nexus first. He doesn't have a lot of money to do so. This drone being here from Petraeus is very smart. I think it would be a bit a bit I think, over eager of Jim to let this pylon finish and try to build cannons.
Do we see a cancel here or not? That's going to be the big question.
Is he going to... Oh, boy.
It's pretty far away.
Go for
okay.
it. I mean,
He can block it in, man.
Lings are finishing up right now. They're going to be making their way over there. So what is he looking to do? Force out an insane number of Lings? I don't think he needs to... Oh, okay, those Lings were like not headed there at first. That was really worrisome. He has a cannon on the way back home, too, just in case. So what can he really do with the drone nibbling on this cannon? I think he could block placement of another pylon. Like he shouldn't be able to add anything else here. Yeah, he catches the probe. Petraeus should be able to shut down this cannon. There's the cancel. No harm, no foul. He didn't have to build any extra Zerglings, sitting comfortably at just 6, which, all things considered, isn't the worst investment to have to make as a Zerg because the lower drone count is not as bad when you have a gold base.
That's right. I don't think it affects...
Whoa!
What? Double gold base.
Double gold base. Greetorp, what does it mean?
I'm not sure, man. It means
well, he's just like, you know what? Petraeus has decided this game, his main base is actually going to be the macro hatch. He's like, I don't actually want to mine my main at all. This game's going to go on for like 2 hours, and the last base he mines out is going to be his main. He's going to take his natural before he mines mines out his main.
Honestly, I don't know how this is going to work out. Obviously,
I mean, I've seen some gold bases, but I've not seen a lot. Like, what if he takes his next base is Jim's gold?
Okay, if you want, oh my god, that would be sick. But let's think of it in terms of, like, mathematically. He does have to get 8 less drones now to saturate on 3 bases, which is pretty substantial. I mean, if we're talking about...
The mining time lost to go to that base is not that bad.
Yeah.
The one thing that is still going to be interesting, like, I feel like the Stargate play is actually weaker in this scenario because the Spore Crawler that you can build to defend it is much cheaper than having to build Lings and Spines to defend, like, a gateway push.
No, okay.
I guess it's tricky overall because
Yeah.
it's really difficult to move forces between bases, especially queens, especially to this base. Like, this is just insane. But, does Jim have reason to go over there unless he's going for a push? Because his air unit should go through the right side of the map.
I don't think so. Remember, we saw this exact same situation happen with Petraeus' teammate. And this could be a contrived type of build order where he's like, well, I know you go
Phoenix too.
3 gateways, and then I know you're going to go for the third base. So you're going to start really slow. I'm going to do the same thing of what Kane did last time, but be on real 3-base economy super fast. So my roaches will hit like 30 seconds faster, and my Zerglings are going to be a lot more.
This is crazy.
This
is madness. Just imagine the level of creep speed he can get from here if Jim plays the slow game like he did the last time he played on this map. It actually could just be like truly disgusting.
It's scary at this point, man. If you look at the income tab, it's quite a bit higher than his opponent. I mean, you're looking at almost a 1-base economy more than his opponent, and it's just going to get worse as that harvester count grows and grows for our Zerg hero here.
Yeah, this is definitely not your average Protoss versus Zerg, ladies and gentlemen. That's for sure. You won't see this every day. I will say, like, the right 1 gold base, that makes sense, but 2 is pushing the envelope. Petraeus really must have thought long and hard about what he could do to abuse Jim's style if he opened the same way on this map, or at least similarly enough. The gateway count is climbing. He's going up now to 4 on 2 bases, getting the +1 attack. But if he's going +1 with this Robo, I have to imagine that he might actually just go Phoenix Colossus, and I think that gives Petraeus all the time in the world to make the most of this gold base.
I think he has to all in here, though. Like, going that many gateways, I don't think he can actually push out and take a third. Wow, he's going to do it.
I mean, it's like 1 extra, like the going up to 4 gates instead of just 3. It's like...
Yeah.
A lot of European Protosses try to do that with, without the tech, so they do it even faster. But this is a situation where Jim, keep in mind, still doesn't know at all about that gold base on the bottom left side. He has no reason to suspect that this game is as messed up as it is right now.
I'm surprised, though, because like a lot of times you're moving around the map, you're just trying to find as many like openings on your opponent as possible, and you will go to that top right base a lot of the times to try to snipe a queen, make sure there's Spore Crawlers.
Petraeus' income is truly disgusting right now. He has such an absurd amount of money. He's getting 2K right now. That's 3 base. That's like 3 base Terran.
Full saturation
with like a mule.
With mules, yeah.
Like that's. Oh man.
It's the dream, bro.
The dream.
And from here, he doesn't have the drone up anymore. He has 47 harvesters, and he's crushing in economy.
That's.
That is insane.
Yeah, he's going to dive on top of this third base. Again, he can produce Zerglings for days, Greetorp. These Zealots, well, I think they said it best. They can't really hold this base. He's going to pick all of them off, going for the Nexus once again. The cannon should be able to finish, and with the Phoenix, you know, he can do something or at least try. But the 1-1 upgrades were finished, so that really allows these Zerglings to chew through the Zealots with ease.
And with 2,000 minerals, your income per minute, you can get 80 Zerglings a minute. Let's just flood. Let's just flood and keep going. And at this point, he's like, oh my god.
He's like, I know you want that third base.
Creep is right there? Why is Creep right there? This doesn't feel good.
He's like, did you like go TLO, just walk a queen to the center of the map? It's like, no, I'm not that crazy.
I have a tree there.
Yeah, just as if to suggest that that's less crazy, you know. But this is still a really tense, awkward situation for Jim because he's now, it should be like dawning on him. He's like, oh, you have 2 gold bases. Now, the Colossus is still a pretty reasonable way to deal with it. You know, even with the upgrades, the Zealots are still going to be able to handle the Lings in that numbers. You know, it's not going to, I don't think we're going to go like comic book, you know, 500 Lings rush in to crush him. But
I am
he's got a Spire
you know what we're going to see?
Pit.
We're going to see the old school style of like Belshir Vestige. With Scarlet, how she would get like the fast Zergling upgrades, and then she would go into Ultralisks.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that, like, I just feel like right now Petraeus is just a massive boulder rolling down the hills of New Zealand. He's coming for him, man.
I think so.
I don't know how many hills are in New Zealand, but if there were any,
Petraeus
would be rolling down them right now.
Actually, it has to be hilly. That's where Lord of the Rings was shot.
Well, there you go. There you go. This is the kind of thing that just scales so hard the longer the game goes on. Like, the one interesting adjustment I will note, Jim has thrown up a Templar Archives with all of this. And keep in mind, he never actually switched into Void Rays like he did against Kane. So he's made his own adjustments. And I will say that if he goes into Archons or Templar, like, Storm is still reasonable in general.
Yep.
The Templar are good against the Vipers that are coming out now. And Archons in general are also going to wreck Zerglings.
I think the High Templars are 100% right now for those Vipers. That's all he has to really worry about because he sees the super fast Hive with his Phoenixes moving around all through the field. You need to have those High Templars around this time to be able to actually push out, to take your 4th base. Like, it just enables you to do things. So I agree with that. A lot of times, you know, they don't even go for the Storm.
Yeah, a lot of the Chinese players especially don't either.
You just push out. You feedback, and then merge your Templars and just go for it.
Yeah,
and it looks like that's what we're going to be seeing.
And this creep set makes it very difficult to get a pylon as close as you'd want, too. Like, he doesn't have a War Prism with this army, so the further he goes out, the trickier it gets. 2 Zerglings coming in now. They've managed to run inside. Like, there's like 5 photon cannons here. Jim's done everything he can to try to protect against the counterattack. This is actually really, really smart by him as he makes this push forward.
Still, it's a little bit scary as 4 Ultras are on the way out right now. Are they actually in this base over here?
The Ultras alone should be just so strong. Well, getting caught off guard like this is nice. That's actually really important that he sees this because I think right now you just add in as many you queue up Immortals on your robotics facility if you can, and then just make as many Archons as possible. Because Archons are actually tremendously powerful against Ultralisks as well.
I agree. And you just sit back. There's no reason for you to actually engage here, because you know you're going to have the better engagement. You have that AoE with the Colossus.
That was so smart of Jim to have so many cannons to lock down that 3rd base. He removed the aspect of the counterattack completely from this game for Petraeus, and now he's basically saying, you don't have time to sit back and build up what you want. Keep in mind, he still gets the Ultralisks out. He's still got chitinous plating, and he has the adrenal gland. So like his army is very well upgraded. He just probably wants more time to max out on it.
And it looks like he's maxing out a lot faster than his opponent. It all really comes down to, 1, these transfuses, and number 2,
he has to use those Vipers as well.
Those Vipers. That's the real question. Like, how is he going to be able to use the Vipers with these Phoenixes?
I'm surprised he's not already trying to play for the Abducts on this army. Like, removing an Ultralisk, or excuse me, removing the Colossi from the equation really allowed those Link Bloods to do so much more. He's pushing in right now. There he goes. The Blinding Clouds on top of the Colossi. Actually, Fungal holding them in place as well. Really using that combination, and the transfusions on the Ultralisks are allowing them to get through most of these Zealots. Now that the Zealots are gone, he's pushing him back. The creep spread has dissipated, but there's just a ridiculous number of transfuses. Gets the Mothership Core. No exit. No escape. escape for you.
Oh my gosh, he just gunned through that. Finally, the transfuses are over, but now he just backs up. The Colossus still maintained, but that's still a very nice winning move by Petraeus. Defending against that, that represents a lot of the momentum that Jim could have had. Now what does he do? No fourth base up. His main base is going to mine out in the coming minutes. Same thing with his natural. He needs to start playing a little bit more defensive and trying to take bases.
Yeah, you know, he has to try to get a fourth at this point. You know, he has the Dark Shrine on the way. He's building 2 Immortals at a time. This is the part where it does get tricky for Petraeus because even a Protoss player behind in supply, if he gets like 6 or 7 Immortals, those Ultras are removed from the equation. You know, I guess it can still work if you get the Blinding Cloud Fungal combination so that he can't hit fire with all the Immortals at once. But it's still a very, very dangerous game to be playing.
I agree. And honestly, though, by looking at the supply counts, I mean, it might not be enough at this point if Petraeus chooses to actually push out. And when you're at this supply, I mean, normally you're thinking, how do I actually attack my opponent? The biggest problem is going to be creep spread and getting those queens over to the opposite side of the map.
Yeah, the nicest part about the way that Petraeus opened is as this gold base on the right side mines out, his natural is still totally fresh.
Yeah.
And this allows him to only really defend 1 point, that being the third. You know, the gold base is no longer really a factor. There are some gas that he's going to mine from there, but for the most part, it's paid itself over several times, and it's no longer like a point where he has to worry about defending it. He can position his army to only defend 1 spot or make a big push if he so chooses.
Just based on that, I mean, it actually puts the clock now on Jim, right? Like, Jim can't go into endgame because that's
It's like,
that would have been cool.
Didn't actually, it's like, no, I didn't intend to bring you along, sorry.
All right. The big attack is incoming.
Yeah, he's setting these Zerglings up to go for another big counter. He's hoping to try to get his way into the main. Oh, okay, actually they're starting to spill in. You know, those are 3 Lings with Adrenal Glands. A good number of these do get roasted up by the Colossi, but you only need a few to get in to really make that impact because they're just so damn strong. And I love this. He brings an Overlord to spread creep with the Queens he has for transfuses. He can even drop forward tumors now.
Pack of Zealots will go to the 4th base, or whatever base that is. Ordinarily the 4th base, though, and try to clean this up, but there are units to not deny it. Looks like the hatchery does go down. But nevertheless, I mean, we're looking for a point where Petraeus can actually push out.
Oh boy, these Templar are running forward.
Oh no!
Oh, what?
He has to just feed
gets
back.
a couple feedbacks. Okay, he at least gets to expend the energy off of them, but they do die, so no Archons there. There's still a tremendous number of transfuses available. Warp Prism does get into the natural expansion. The DTs get fungled. The Queen is there, but he's going to snipe the Spore Crawler. These things are getting a little bit tricky. He'll kill the Warp Prism, but these DTs are just trying to do everything they can to shut this base down.
This is exactly what Jim needs to do, though. He needs to stop his opponent
really
from
badly.
actually snowballing.
This buys him a lot of time because he had to pull all the Ultralists back because, you know, these DTs can be really rough. Actually, the static defense you're building is actually blocking your Ultralists.
All right, he does clean it up, so the hatchery is still safe.
And once the static defense finishes up, sniping that again, like trying to snipe it, shouldn't work. Yeah, he has a ridiculous number of spines building.
So the problem is he didn't clean any creep off of that. So, like, you're just investing to the attack. You should invest into the attack.
While he makes that push, if he pushes to clear the tumors, I think that helps a lot. Because now they're right outside of his base again.
Have it multi-purpose, have it accomplish 2 different things that help you achieve your goal.
And there's scenarios where, you know, we would say, like, okay, creep helps, but in this scenario, it's very crucial to Petraeus' strategy because he relies on the Queens, which move, you know, absurdly slow off creep.
Still, we don't have, like, a very clear win condition for... Oh, no, there they are. The Broodlords. So he needs some way to engage against his opponent's army without, like, moving in off creep into a huge Protoss
He'll
ball.
only have 3. I think maybe the Lings he's thrown away, he's trying to make something happen with this. He is mostly out of Zerglings. He starts up a 4th Broodlord. I mean, at this point, I'd imagine you'd want to try to hit close to critical mass on the Broodlords first, but his army is also getting slower as he adds in these units. You remove those Zerglings and these Zealot counterattacks become more and more deadly.
It's definitely true, but that's why a lot of times you'll trade out. So you'll go, oh wow, gets the cancel. You'll go and make additional spine crawlers to get rid of some of your drones, and then with that extra supply, you're going to be able to make those Broodlords, and also at the same time, you are defending from the Zealot counterattacks all the time. He's
running the Templar forward, just trying to get some feedback snipes.
Not a second time!
That's where the Broodlords come into play, and suddenly Jim's like, well, he has 2 more Stargates on the way. He is aware that there are Broodlords now. Things he needs to start as well, though I think a Fleet Beacon would help, unless he's going to try to switch to Void Rays, which is still pretty dicey.
That is very dicey, man. And it's not going to come out anytime soon, just because obviously he's maxed.
Yeah, well, he's moving into a position where he's actually kind of choked up. The Blinding Clouds and Fungals hit everything in the center. The Broodlords are firing on the army. He just walked into Petraeus' death trap. The whole army doing nothing.
It's just getting obliterated so fast, and that's what happens when Ultras are able to get into your army's composition, and the Immortals cannot do anything. That was such a fast execution of both the Blinding Cloud and the Fungal Growth. Props to Petraeus. That was such a well-handed attack.
That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, Greetor.
And it was Zerg, bro. That's how you know.
That was something else.
That was beautiful, man.
I mean, that
was
easy. That was a fully fledged Protoss army that was not even shooting as it died.
I mean, look at the Remax. It's just 2 Ultras, 12 Zerglings, and 4 Infestors.
He barely lost anything.
He barely lost anything. And then, of course, Jim, he's at 118 supply right now.
Yeah, that's not a fun place to be. He's just going to keep pushing up. Petraeus wants to move out of this group in second place, and I think he's damn well done it as he gets into the third base, into this natural. All those photon cannons aren't going to save him now. The Broodlords are just wailing away. The Stargates will find themselves not being utilized. He doesn't have any resources, not the gas at this point. He's just warping in Stalkers. That's not going to save you against this. He can go for Abducts with these Vipers. There he goes, pulls the Colossus in. And at this point, is a move command away from the round of 16.
That's right, man. Just beautifully played by Petraeus. Throughout the entire day, even a series against Bunny, it was super close. GG gets called, and Petraeus will move on into the Toronto Finals.
Nice play by Officer Petraeus as he makes his way, as you said, to the Toronto round of 16 finals. Really, really well played. That engagement is something that I will dream about for many moons to come, Greetor.
It's that Bronze League strategy, man. That it's like
well,
okay,
if I could just Fungal Growth and then Blinding Cloud. He has no range and can't move. It's like, well,
and then
that's
a pro
really hard.
comes in and it's like, that's never going to happen. That's so unrealistic.
That's really difficult to do. Like, you understand, StarCraft's a hard game. And then Petraeus is like, well, you know, when you play 500 games a day, it's not really that big of a deal. It's like, I only need to be able to do it 25% of the time to get a good amount of practice in it because he plays so many games.
Yeah, and who has the experience of those late game compositions other than Petraeus? Not many people in the world are capable of moving a Zerg army with so many casters. You have Investors, you have Vipers, you have Ultras that need to be in position.
The
you
Queens
have
that
Queens
need to
that need to transfuse. You have Queens that actually need to put down creep tumors. You need to be constantly spreading creep. There are so many things to keep up with in those late game armies, and you also have to think, do I Blinding Cloud or do I go for Abducts? That's a lot of decisions to be making at like 1 second.
And there was only one moment in that game where it seemed like there was even a chance that Petraeus could be broken when he pushed through the gold and cleared the creep. And even then, you know, the upgrades really came in to help him so much. And the Blinding Cloud with the Fungal, like he got the Vipers and he made that first move, even with such small armies. And from that point, if you're Jim, it's like, well, I have to just turtle now, and the Zerg can do whatever they want. Aside from the fact that, of course, he opened with double hatch on gold bases.
And we've seen that 3-base Protoss, like, all-in almost. I don't want to call it an all-in, but it's like 3-base, heavy pressure. You get some High Templars, Archons. We've seen that kill Zerg so many times.
It is so strong, but I can't wait to hear what Petraeus has to say. He's on the main stage with Sue. Let's see what he has to say.
Thank you very much, Nate. Congratulations, Petraeus, on making it to the round of 16. A fantastic series from you. It's funny because when I just spoke to you last, you didn't smile after your games against Kane, and we got a little bit more of a smile from you now. So are you satisfied with your performance here today?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I usually show a bit more emotion. I'm not sure why I didn't this time. I don't really feel as happy with this result, even though it is by far my biggest tournament result in my entire career. I don't know, I don't feel that great about it, but obviously I am a little bit happy. You know, it beats losing, yeah.
Definitely beats losing. I want to jump right into that game too because you decided to go for doubled gold bases, and many people were very surprised by this decision. Can you tell us why?
It's just kind of where the metagame on that map has been heading lately. Actually, in the past, I haven't been one to, you know, go all out on the gold bases, but I've just been talking to a lot of Zerg friends of mine, and they all say gold bases are really strong on that map. So, yeah, I kind of just freestyled it a bit, didn't have a lot of practice with it, but it is definitely a very strong strategy on that map.
When we spoke to you after your games against Kane, you did mention that nerves were a big part of that series, but in this series, you seemed very calm, very collected. Was that actually the case, or did your gameplay just come out very smoothly?
No, it definitely was. This series was definitely a lot more comfortable, a lot less nerves in this series, and I think it showed in the games. Like in the first series against Bunny, I was even more nervous than I mentioned in the series versus Kane. Like I could actually hear my heart like pounding louder than like the game sounds that I could hear. I hadn't experienced anything like that before, so that was a bit strange. But no, I felt a lot less nervous in this series.
Well, speaking of nerves, you had a little taste of a small audience here in Burbank, but now you're going to be going to Toronto. That audience is going to be absolutely huge, a lot of noise, a lot of cheering for you. How do you think that the nerves will play there, and how excited are you to be there?
I don't think the size of the crowd would affect my nerves. Honestly, it's more just being on a stage, any kind of stage, even if there were like 5 people, I still think I would be a little bit nervous. But I am excited to play in Toronto, and yeah, I hope I can do well though.
All right, and last but not least, since this is your debut in Premier League, and it's our first time seeing you at a really big major tournament like this, I want to give you the chance to say something to the fans that you have out there.
Big thanks to everyone who has cheered me on along the way. There's definitely been, it was a hard path, I guess, and yeah, I'm really thankful for the kind messages on Twitter and all that sort of stuff from people who just continue to support me, even when I didn't have a lot of success, and now I really hope I can do you all proud.
All right, well, congratulations again, Petraeus, on making it to the round of 16 and joining Bunny. Let's head over to the caster's desk and see what their thoughts are on all the action that happened today.
Oh, it's been such a good day to kick off Season 2 of Premier League for WCS. I hope you've all had a good time watching. I hope our lovely audience here has enjoyed their time as well. It seemed like the players had a lot of fun. Just really good results. And Petraeus, what a great story for his first Premier League run.
I know. Really, I think the second spot was up for contention a lot because everybody thought Bunny was just on a tear, but still, like, any of the players could have surprised, like especially when you know you're playing against Bunny or you know you're going to be playing against a set of players. There's a lot of tricky things that you can do to reduce that edge.
Yeah, really, really fantastic games today. Let's hear our final thoughts from Sue and our analyst about today's matches.
Thank you, Nate. Of course, I am joined here with Huck, who is, we just wrapped up our first day of round of 32. This is also your first day of casting. How is it for you?
Easy. As Bunny would say about Protoss, I would say about casting.
All right, well, speaking of Bunny, it was Bunny and Petraeus that made it out of Group A. Is this a result that you expected, or did you expect something else?
Oh, no, I definitely thought Bunny was going to make it out first, and then the second slot was up to Kane or Petraeus. Jim played a lot better than I expected, but all in all, it's good to see Mac, overcome his nerve issues and actually have a big result, because I think he's deserved it for a while.
Well, headed into tomorrow, it'll be Group B, and it'll feature 4 players. I believe our first match will be Tudeming versus Stardust, and then it'll be Sen versus 4GG. This is a very, very tough group with already 2 Koreans in it. What are your initial thoughts?
Oh, why are you saying 2 Koreans? Is it because you're Korean? You just feel biased, or?
I mean, Koreans happen to have this history of doing really well in this game.
I think 4GG is by far the strongest in the group. But I would say actually that Stardust and the 2 other players are about the same level, I would say. So 4GG is really strong. He'll make it out first, probably guaranteed. But the other 3 players is kind of up for contention, I guess. Like the second Korean, not just going to auto-win or anything, as you might make it seem.
Well, the other 2 players, Tudeming and Sen, we saw today that Jim was able to perform better than maybe people would have expected from him. Do you think we can expect the same sort of, performance from Tudeming and Sen as well, since we don't get to see them that often, like dark horses?
Sen's kind of older, like me, so I don't expect him to do that well, to be honest, even though he's a great guy. Tudeming, though, I've heard he's top 25 on GM Korea. So I've met him. He's a nice guy. I think it would be 4GG first, and I would say Tudeming second. Stardust, I talked to him a little bit as well. He said he's playing a lot more, but he doesn't feel like he's quite there yet. So we'll see, I guess. But I would say Tudeming second, 4GG first.
All right, well, thank you very much, Tuck. That will wrap up our first day here at WCS Premier League, Day 1 in Group A. We'll be back tomorrow at noon PDT with Group B. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, G1 Gaming, for all their help. Make sure to let us know what you guys are thinking at home, hashtag WCS on social media. And until then, from all of us here in Burbank, California, have a good night.
One game away from the crowd.